Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado, proudly calling Colorado home for over 90 years. Dedicated to showing up for the community and putting people first. Credit Union of Colorado. Learn more at cuofco.org. Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Shop online and get $30 off your first online order when you use code SAFE30 at checkout. Get the same prices, deals, and rewards as in store. Get started at Safeway.com or the Safeway app.
You, like many residents in the area, might have seen some potentially concerning black and yellow smoke coming from Commerce City yesterday. The smoke was coming from a Suncor refinery smokestack. Suncor, which has been accused of violating pollution emission limits for years, sent out community notices letting people know that the smoke was due to maintenance work and that, quote, no action by the public is required. Flares are used by the refinery as a safety measure, burning off excess combustible chemicals. Under the terms of the air permit given to it by Colorado officials, the company is allowed to release visible smoke up to 6 minutes per hour. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. Coming up, a rough weekend at DIA.
Tower Frontier 4345, we're stopping on the runway. We just hit somebody. We have an engine fire.
Then, dueling legislation over regulating or incentivizing data centers just had their plug pulled. What does this mean?
With all these moving pieces, it sounds like some state lawmakers just wanted to wait.
And a new conviction is putting into question anti-doxxing laws protecting public officials.
She never advocated for anyone to go to this officer's house and put them on a spit and roast them over an open fire.
We take you to what's in the middle of the showdown. Plus,
here's a couple of peaches that will never get to the packing shed.
After last week's freeze, will you still get Palisade peaches in the store? It's Tuesday, May 12th. Here's the news in Colorado today. As I'm sure you've heard, it's been a rough few days for Frontier flights at DIA. On Friday night, a still unidentified person jumped the airport's perimeter fence and minutes later was struck by a Frontier jet as it tried to take off. The collision damaged the plane, and it forced an emergency evacuation as the cabin filled with smoke. 12 people reported minor injuries. The airport is warning that it may be a while before we get answers on how this could have happened, but it is raising questions about how the airport manages security around its perimeter. DIA operates on 53 square miles. That, according to the airport, that is an area that is around twice the size of Manhattan. And this wasn't the only incident to force passengers off of a plane at DIA last week. On Sunday, the discovery of an ammunition magazine delayed a flight bound for Phoenix. Officials now say that the magazine was left behind by a law enforcement officer on an earlier leg of the flight. Colorado will go at least one more year without statewide rules or incentives for data center development. Data centers would have had to pay the full cost of the electricity that their facilities use and guaranteed that extra power came from sources that don't contribute to climate change. But the bill to do that, it died in the state legislature Monday, and efforts to create tax credits to build data centers in Colorado also failed. Here to tell us what this all means is CPR's Sam Brash. Hey there, Sam.
Hey, Arlo.
So we talked at the start of the legislative session about the idea that lawmakers had a choice between two dueling approaches to data centers. One bill would have focused on tax incentives, and the other, strict environmental rules. But in the end, both of them failed. So what happened?
Bottom line, neither approach got enough support to pass. So throughout this whole session, we had these two dueling approaches. It was pretty clear that they were incompatible on their own. And we heard that there were negotiations around a compromise with a pretty basic outline. Environmentalists were willing to allow some level of tax incentives, and in exchange, they wanted the data center industry to agree to strict rules on water and energy usage, on air quality protections, and guarantees to make sure that all this new electricity usage didn't boost regular people's energy bills. There was a final push to make a deal like that happen over the weekend, but it wasn't able to garner enough votes. So just with days left in the legislative session, backers admitted defeat on Monday.
So then what happens now? If a company wants to build a data center in Colorado, are there any restrictions?
Sure. So data centers still have to follow local rules and regulations. They got to follow state air quality laws. Cities are also clamping down on data center development. Denver, most notably, is moving towards a data center moratorium as it's trying to figure out local rules and regulations. But it's clear that Colorado as a whole hasn't been able to answer big questions around these facilities.
What kind of questions are you talking about?
I think the top line thing is incentives, right? Like, do we want to, as a state, offer sales tax incentives for data centers to lure them here and make sure they're not going to Wyoming or Utah? That's a tough sell when our budget is so tight and data centers have become so controversial. There's also, environmental risks, but also rewards. I think a lot of people have heard about how these facilities use so much water and energy, but we also have an electricity grid that needs tons of investment right now because of wildfires, because of an aging grid, because of our switch to clean energy. And data centers could be one place where you get that investment.
On top of all of that, there's the politics in this issue.
Totally. And I think that's one thing that we're seeing move really fast. The AI industry is unpopular across the country. It's unpopular across party lines. I even heard some Republicans were considering voting for the environmentalist-backed bill around data centers. And at the same time, the industry has been saying it's already spending tons on campaign donations nationwide to make sure its industry isn't overregulated or anything like that. With all these moving pieces, it sounds like some state lawmakers just wanted to wait. They're cautious because they're not sure where the chips are going to land.
Sam, while we're on that topic, lawmakers adjourned their work on Wednesday. Do you think they're going to try again to do something on data centers next year?
Absolutely. State Senator Kathy Kipp sponsored the environmentalist-backed bill, and she promised to bring it back next session and had a message for tech companies. She said that people are waking up to the harms caused by data centers and that the industry better be ready to come to the table.
Sam, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Colorado has taken more steps in recent years to make sure public servants don't feel threatened when they're doing their jobs. Public health workers, animal control officers, judges, and police officers are all covered by the state's anti-doxxing laws. They make publicly sharing an official's home address and other information a crime if it leads to a serious threat to that person's safety or their families. But a recent conviction under that law is raising major questions about free speech, public interest, and personal safety.
What convictions like this might lead to is what's known in First Amendment doctrine as the chilling effect. That could cause a lot of people to simply just back off and not publish the information at all.
CPR's Ava Kian has been following this court case and joins us now. Hey, Ava.
Hi, Arlo.
I want to back up and talk about this particular court case. What's the story here?
Yeah, this case involves Regan Benson. She's a frequent critic of the Denver Police Department and an advocate for a lot of unhoused people in the city. It centers around a live stream she held outside of the District 3 police station last September. In the video, she asked viewers to look up the home address of DPD Commander Joel Bell and suggested holding a pig roast there. Bell and Benson had crossed paths previously, and Benson had recently filed a lawsuit against the commander, along with others in the department. She and her husband had also recently received a payout from the city as part of a settlement for another issue involving the department. When some viewers found his address, she said it over the live stream and then repeated the idea of a pig roast. And following that stream, Commander Bell decided to press charges using the anti-doxxing law.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about that law. What exactly does it do?
It really focuses on exposing information about people in public-facing jobs in a way that creates serious and imminent threat to that person's safety or their families. DPD and Bell declined to comment for my story, but in court, Bell had testified that between the lawsuit and the pig roast comments, he was worried for his and his family's safety.
And it sounds like the jury agreed that Benson went too far.
Yes, Benson was convicted, and the judge sentenced her to 60 days of jail time, 2 years of probation, a $1,000 fee, and she was ordered to take a victim empathy class. Her lawyer, Jamie Hubbard, told me they're planning to appeal, in part because they believe what Benson did was covered by the First Amendment. Her argument here is that the pig roast comment was taken far too literally and viewed as a threat. She argues it was just hyperbole and wordplay.
She never advocated for anyone to go to this officer's house and put them on a spit and roast them over an open fire. Like, that was not the tone and tenor of this live stream.
Hubbard also argued that because of Benson's history with DPD, the entire lawsuit was a case of retaliation. Denver District Attorney John Walsh also declined my interview request for the story, but in a statement he sent to me, he argued that Benson should have reasonably known her comments could pose a threat to the officer.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I have this straight. It seems like the major disagreement here is whether when Benson shared the address, she was actually endangering or trying to endanger the police officer, or she was just using her free speech rights.
That's exactly it. We heard from Alan Chen earlier. He's a professor at the University of Denver's Durham College of Law and an expert on the First Amendment. He told me this case gives him some pause because the conviction in part seems to have been based on how that officer felt.
This is the problem. Like, perhaps he did feel that subjectively, but was that from the actual words of the defendant in this case, or was it because he just generally thought that there would be a harm or a threat if his information was disclosed?
Chen is worried this law could scare people away from sharing information that could be public interest. He gave the example of holding a protest outside of the home of a public official. That is protected activity under the First Amendment. But of course, it could feel extremely threatening to the person being protested.
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting debate. Where are things going to go next?
Well, like I mentioned, Benson and her lawyer are working on an appeal, both on First Amendment grounds, but also on some procedural decisions the judge made during the trial. Benson was handcuffed and sent to jail Friday on a $3,000 bond. Hubbard told me she was released Saturday morning.
CPR's Avakian, thank you so much.
Thanks, Arlo.
This is the Colorado peach, tree-ripe and tasty,
There's nothing quite like Colorado peach,
justly famous for their flavor, color, and sweetness, blushing beauty.
but fans of the fruit may have been feeling nervous lately, worrying whether last week's freeze took out this season's crop. But good news, according to the Colorado Sun, about 80 to 90% of Palisade peaches made it through just fine. That survival, it isn't luck. It is the result of a mix of hard work and ingenuity. Now, of course, Colorado peach growers have never been short on either, as this 1950s documentary shared by History Colorado makes it clear.
To simplify the job, Western Colorado growers for years have used a unique stilt walking method. And what better way could be devised to reach the treetops?
Stilts weren't required for last week's rescue effort. Instead, when the cold weather threatened nature's candy, growers basically went into battle mode. They used wind chimes, sprinklers, and even, and I need to make sure I get this right, amino acids and calcium sprays, new substances they are testing that could act, as I saw described somewhere, as little snug sweaters for peaches. And thanks to all that effort, plus our generally warm spring overall, around 30 million pounds of peaches might start showing up at fruit stands a month earlier than usual. That's about the second week of June. That could all mean, in the words of 1990s alternative rock band, the Presidents of the United States of America, millions of peaches, peaches for me.
Millions of peaches, peaches for me. Millions of peaches, peaches for free.
Reporting for today's show came from CPR's Molly Cruz and Tegan Wetland, plus Taylor Dolvin and Nancy Loftholm at the Colorado Sun and the Associated Press. Thank you for listening to today's show. Remember to leave us a review, and while you're there, share what peach recipes you're excited about making now that peaches will be back on the table. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. From fresh produce to tender cuts of meat, Safeway proudly supports Colorado farms and local small businesses. You support local when you shop at Safeway or in the Safeway app.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado, proudly calling Colorado home for over 90 years, dedicated to showing up for the community and putting people first. Credit Union of Colorado. Learn more at cuofco.org.